You are now tuned into the First and 10 podcast brought to you by OXP MEDIA. I'm your host, Brandon Graham, and I'm pleased to be joined by a special guest. What can we say about this man? There's a lot of things you can say about Ilyas Kurbanov, the host of 9450 podcast, a future sports analyst, a graduate from the University of King's College in Canada's oldest charter university. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing all right, man. Thanks for joining, first of all, right? Probably getting all your Billy's busy schedule, watching all these college basketball games and whatnot. I can see you tweeting all the time. You're going hard, man. You're going hard.
It's a grind, man. I'm trying my best. It's hard too, because it's like a part-time student-ish, part-time. You work at a part-time job, then you have your own basketball practices, games, whatever, and then I try to watch as much as I can. A few good games on tonight, for sure.
Definitely. But I want to get into your story a little bit, Ilyas, right? Because we met through OXP Media, and of course, I did a little research, a little digging around, of course, and there's quite a bit of stuff that I've actually noticed and I've actually learned about you, right? Mm-hmm. So you're originally from Turkmenistan, itself,
yeah.
And of course, moved to Montreal, but you moved when you were, you started playing basketball when you were 8 years old, but when did you move from Turkmenistan, and how was your overall perception when you came to Canada? When you first came here, how was that?
Honestly, it's really different, like from everything, in every aspect of life, people, and the way, everything kind of is like fast paced. Like I'm coming from like one of the smaller countries, only 6 million people, and like a country that's like 80% desert. And not a lot of opportunities as well, right? With a lot of other political stuff that I'm not going to get into. I just tend to kind of fade away from politics regardless of where I'm at. Mm-hmm. But it was, it was great. Honestly, everything, like I said, from school to basketball to like, different cultures and different mentalities of every single person that was around me was, it's like, it's kind of a learning process. You learn a lot, language wise, you learn a lot, like what people live in their respective countries. Cause obviously I'm not the only immigrant that was even in my little area in Montreal, right? It's like a bunch of people that come from variety of, points of the world, Israel, Russia, Ukraine, Hungary, Romania, and, the list can go on and on. So, yeah, everything is different. Like if I had to describe it in one word, different would be
definitely the word.
The word, yeah.
Okay, so you come from Turkmenistan to Canada, and I read something. You said you actually started learning like the English language, French language on the basketball court, or just be in the streets. Is that true? You actually
that's actually true, yeah.
Okay, so the only way you can actually
there's a like true story. There was a time I was at a park. I was, playing ball. It was a summer day. And there's this guy, his name is Casey, one of my friends I still talk to sometimes.
Right.
There was a word that he said that I could not understand. I'm like trying to figure out like, what is he trying to tell me? Because I probably told him something and the word was true.
True. Okay.
Like true is like, one of the most common words in English language, if you think about it. And I kid you not, he's been living in that area for probably like ever since he was born. And he would look around for Russian people who also spoke English so they can translate it to me. Like,
oh wow, yeah.
Like when I was learning English on a basketball court, that's how I actually was learning it. Like I did not understand a lot of things, and then you kind of like you kind of nod your head, no, yes, and then like say the little things, because people will come to the park and be like, oh, hey, what's up? Like everyone, like for some reason there was a guy he called me Dirk.
Okay.
Because you know what I mean? And
yeah.
I think the reason why is like when I shoot the ball, most of the times my arc is pretty high.
Okay.
And he's like, and Dirk's like the guy sends it all the way to the top and like
it's going to ceiling. Yeah.
Yeah. So for that reason, and it's like, it's like the same people. You see the same people, and they're like, hey, what's up? And they'll say like some jokes about like Russians that Russians would understand, and then you just laugh about it and whatever. And like every single time, like as years went by, I would see the same people I kind of saw in that same park, and everyone's like, yo, your English is like, I don't know, like it's so much better than it used to. It
Mm-hmm.
used to be. And like every single year is the same conversations, like, yo, your English is like so much better. Like
Mm-hmm.
everyone goes like, yo, I remember when you couldn't say a word.
Really? And then now you're
Yeah.
doing that.
Yeah.
Incredible,
So
man.
it's like,
Incredible.
that's actually how I started. And I organized English learning. Like I didn't start until the age of 18. Like I
Wow.
did not like, so I moved to Canada. I was 16 in
16.
2011.
Right.
And like, I did not like really learn English language as a second language or first language at that point till I
Right.
was 18 years old.
Wow. I thought it was earlier than that. So, okay. So you start playing basketball when you're 8 years old, right? I saw this in the interview with your King's College, of course. Saw this all. I did my research there. But so when you're learning basketball, you're learning like the guys are saying like head top, they're like crossing out, like all those things. Like that's where you're learning basketball, right? Especially when they have slang. So in Montreal, were you speaking firstly English or was it French? And how was Montreal when you first got there? Did you think you were going to leave? Because I'm going to get into it really soon, but how was kind of growing up there a bit?
Honestly, growing up there was not that hard. I think I
Right.
was young enough to really like understand what was going on in
Mm-hmm.
terms of like me moving, like leaving kind of my friends behind, and you know the past pretty much, like just it's there, it's going to be there. I'm going to remember, I'm going to cherish you know, most of it.
Right.
But it really came down to a point where it's like, you know what, I'm here now, I might as well take advantage of the opportunity that I have. And
Mm-hmm.
when it came down to languages, whether it was French or English, it really depended who I was surrounded by. So if most of the times it was English speaking people, because just of the area that I grew up in, like Côte Saint Luc is predominantly English. There's like people from West Indies, a lot of there's a massive Jewish community.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, the community centers that I would go to, more often than not, more people spoke English, just because it was that kind of
Mm-hmm.
the west side area of the island,
Mm-hmm.
and it's predominantly English.
Okay. Okay.
But whenever I had to go out of that area and then I had to go, like, you know, downtown and whatnot, it gets mixed up a little bit. And then the further east and north you go, that's where it becomes a lot more French as well.
Got it.
So it
Wow.
really depended where I was.
That's really interesting, right? Because of course, like in Ontario, I'm a French immersion student. Like I went to school, I can speak French fluently, so on and so
Mm-hmm.
forth. But it's not like that in Ontario. So the way you grew up is definitely, especially coming from another country, sick, and then going from there. So when you're 16, 17 years old, I'm still trying to learn, your life altogether. But you decided, you decided to play basketball. All right, you play basketball there. I'm assuming you played with a club team. Were you getting different looks, or you just decided you wanted to go to Halifax to go to King's College? Like, what was that thought process, especially with family as well too, with all that happening?
Mm-hmm. Well, in terms of family, like my mom sort of knew that I was like fairly independent in
Right.
terms of like what I wanted to do with my life. Cause like, even when I went to Champlain College, is like commute to it was like
Mm-hmm.
an hour and a half public transport. I don't drive, like I just, public transport did it for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then my mom was pissed. She's like, you could have went to Dawson. It's just downtown, like 30 minutes away. You don't have to pay extra fees in order, to commute and
Mm-hmm.
whatnot. So it's like, she was kind of mad, but then at the end of the day, I got my degree. Everything goes out the window. Because once you get your degree, your mom is like, good job.
Good job.
Now it's time to go to university type of thing,
Of
So
course, of course.
it was one of those kind of situations. And when it came down to University of King's College, I initially applied to go Concordia just for school. I didn't think about basketball at the time. Well, I did, but if things weren't going to work out, I was just, become a full-time student and work a part-time job and live my life type of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Moody, shout out to Michael Moody, he's my trainer. He's been on my podcast before. He talks about player and coach relationship and the importance about it. If you want to catch it, you can catch it on YouTube.
94 by 50
out there
podcast.
listening.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yep.
94 by 50 podcast. He's a great individual. I met him in my last year at Champlain College, St. Lambert, where I was on a basketball team, but I never had the chance to play. There's a variety of reasons and whatnot, coach's decision, and I respected whatever. It made me who I am today.
Of course.
So I stuck with Moody. Moody told me it doesn't have to end here. You can go get quality education anywhere else and play basketball. And so I came with him that same summer when I graduated in 2017 to Halifax to train with him for 2 weeks. I stayed at his house for 2 weeks because he's originally from Nova Scotia.
Mm-hmm.
And from there, I had one look, which was University of King's College. I went to a run, and assistant coach Riley Halpin, I believe his last name. I don't want to mispronounce it or whatnot.
Don't do that.
But he talked to me after a run. He's like, "Hey, give me a phone number. I'll connect you with our head coach," who at the time was Peter McLaughlin. And and they said from that point on, it's like it clicked. I went for a lunch with Coach McLaughlin. We talked about the opportunities and the type of education that I could get from University of King's College. And from that point on, is history. I graduated with a journalism degree. I'm still on the basketball team with the current coach, Luke Stevenson. And, there's a whole story behind me being part of the Blue Devils community. Because I've lived 3 different coaches pretty much throughout the 5 years now that I've been there. And honestly, I wouldn't change a thing about it.
No, 100%. That's a great point. You don't want to change anything with your journey, because it makes you who you are when you go through all those things, right? And of course, I have a lot of questions to ask you, because that's really interesting from you going from Quebec to Nova Scotia playing basketball. And you did say in an interview as well, it was like, hey, not too many people from where I'm coming from get the opportunity for to graduation, for education in general, right? So you must be grateful for that. But yeah, being in the in Nova Scotia, you wrote for the Dalhousie Gazette. Is that true?
Exactly. Yeah, I did.
The Sick podcast?
I did write for the Sick podcast, yeah.
Okay, right. So you're doing all these different things. So you're reaching out to different people. Plus, you had an internship at TSN 1950. I'm not sure if it's
690.
690, right?
Yeah.
So over here in Toronto, it's 590. So all these opportunities are internships. You're reaching out, doing a lot of things in that community. Do you know Nate Darling at all?
Nate Darling, yeah, I have. I do know him. I've played a couple of ones with him. He's insane. He's solid. Okay. Really good player. Really good
definitely.
Player.
Okay, so you're in that community. You're playing right now. I don't want to read off your averages. I know you're doing these sleeves. You're playing basketball, but just being in that community in general in Nova Scotia, like what's the difference from like Quebec to Nova Scotia, and do you see yourself staying there for a long period of time?
In terms of staying here, it really is hard just because of the number of opportunities that you'll get as a professional worker. With me, with my mentality and with my goal and my mindset, there's not a lot of opportunities for what I want to do. And for me, obviously, I want to cover college basketball. That's my dream. And that's what I live for. Watching those college basketball games and, trying to break down little things, break down the game and kind of follow players, teams, and all the other aspects of the game is what I really want to do. And I think staying in Halifax kind of limits that in terms of, getting an opportunity to work somewhere that's really kind of respected in the sphere of college basketball, if you understand what I mean.
Absolutely.
In terms of living, just like, let's say if I was a average worker who made like the average, let's say, salary of like between $50,000 and $70,000 a year, it's a great community to live in. Halifax is hands down one of the friendliest and kindest communities that I've been around, just because like people really treat each other with respect, regardless of who you are. That's and good. Regardless of where you're from. And, something that I don't see in Quebec often enough is the actual unity. Like a lot of times we're being divided by languages, a lot of cultural barriers, whereas here is like, yes, obviously no one is perfect and no city is perfect. There will be like harsh cultural divisions and all that stuff. But at the end of the day, you would still be surrounded by a group of people that will support you. There's a lot of support. For example, the city itself is driven by a lot of small business owners there's a lot of small businesses that you can find. You can walk down the street and somebody owns a nice coffee shop, or I don't know, a little corner store, or a farmer's market that's like by the water, you know, and people love that. People go out and support that. I feel like the monopoly of Montreal, of how big it is, same thing with Toronto, you know, it's really hard to stay afloat just because, well, why would I go to your store when there's 7-Eleven across the street? Or there's Sobeys, or whatever you name it, right?
Right.
There's so many, like Starbucks, Tim's, McDonald's, all that stuff. Everybody has that. So I think it's really, especially during a pandemic, I've learned a lot how people actually come together and like, hey, forget about Starbucks. Let's buy some gift cards from this coffee shop down the street. They'll need it. They'll need that support type of thing. You know what I mean? And that's the true kind of color of Nova Scotia. That's how like friendly the community is. Like everyone's kind of for one another.
Dalhousie Tigers, Dalhousie Gazette, King's College, literally the oldest university in Canada in general. But anyways, I wanted to kind of branch off from that. But you did say in an interview as well too that, like, you know, you said, okay, you know, one day I could probably become a lawyer, or I can probably become, you know, a businessman. But you know what? I've gravitated towards sports media, and you have a passion for that. You're writing, your journalism. Same thing. I went to journalism school as well too. I did a lot of work here and there. Of course, they're still doing carrying the passion and still kind of working forward with that too. But I wanted to ask you, like, are you looking to, would you be interested in actually? And one thing I'll tell you, I think it's probably best sometimes even to go over to the States and see exactly how that is too. If you wanted to, you know, jump into a certain college in the Big Ten, of course, a great market. But I'm kind of just giving you tips. They're not necessarily going, because once again, I did graduate from journalism college, university as well. But I wanted to ask you too, just, is there a certain market that you want to tap into? Are you looking to go to the States? Like, what are your next plans for the next coming years?
Honestly, right now, it's kind of me finishing what I have here. And this is my senior basketball year. Yeah. And from that point on is really wherever life takes me as a next step, right? There's a bunch of jobs you could definitely apply for and, you know, try possibly play professional basketball somewhere, because there's thousands of leagues across the world that you can possibly make some money and have fun with it, travel a little bit. But if that doesn't work out, you never know. So I think it's just me tapping into that sports world and, you know, try and even to find maybe an internship, another opportunity where I can just, you know, continue to work on my craft, develop my skills, and obviously run my 94x50 podcast, you know, maybe freelance a little bit. And honestly, wherever life takes me, if literally next 2 months, someone offers me a job to go cover college basketball in like a small platform in the States that pays enough, I'll take it.
Absolutely.
You know? Really, it's like that's how life is, you know. So an opportunity comes by you, you never know, it could be life changing.
Okay, so let me just tap into your mentality as a basketball player too, because you did mention professional basketball. If there's one player that you emulate your game after, who would that be? And what's your favorite move off the dribble to kind of create space? First of all, let me get that.
Damn.
Hey, listen, I'm a basketball player too, man. Listen, played basketball competitively my entire life, so hey, you could answer that easily. You know,
if I had to say model my game after someone, jeez, I don't think I model my game after anyone. Like, I watch a lot of players and like I do see the things that they do, but I might not necessarily be the same athlete as they are. So it's kind of like hard to emulate or simulate whatever they do. Right. If I had to,
say you're more honestly,
I don't know. No, I'm not. No, far from that, I would say. I think I'm someone who brings a lot of energy on the court. Like I can play solid defense. I can knock down open threes and stuff. You know, like I'm just, I don't know, kind of in a way, a pest on the floor. But I can still, like, if I'm needed to score, I could. And if I had to really use a dribble move to create space, most of the times I try to create space without dribbling. So like give a jab step, you know, pump fake and go to the rim type of stuff. I like those non-dribble moves because they're super underrated. And
Of
I
course.
feel like in today's game, a lot of people don't use them.
Klay Thompson
Because,
does.
yeah,
Yeah,
it's,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, but you know what I mean,
High
though.
clip, high
Like,
clip. Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure, for sure.
exactly. So I would
Yeah.
say I love the Damian Lillard sidestep. I do
Okay.
that sometimes. I'm not obviously Damian Lillard. I'm not going to knock down whatever 40, 50%
Who
of those
is?
shots. You know what I
Who
mean?
is? Yeah,
So
exactly. Yeah,
I
exactly.
love his sidestep. I also love using a screen. So like, and reading it. So if I see a guy, if I use a screen and see the guy go under, I'll try to cross over back to where I was going from and just pull it from there.
That makes sense.
If I have the shot, or just get a driving lane, because the guy will be far off the screen on the other side, and just a lot of space.
Okay.
So I think those are the moves. Yeah.
So you're pretty much Bojan Bogdanovic. Is pretty much what you're trying to tell me. Okay, that's good. That's good.
A lot of people, I don't know why. Maybe because he played on both ends of the floor when he was at Utah, but Gordon Hayward.
Gordon
Maybe
Hayward,
I
yeah,
looked like him.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why people called me Gordon Hayward. But a lot of people, compared me to that guy. I don't know.
Yeah, what it is. Okay, perfect.
I'm no NBA player, so you know what I mean?
You could have said college too, it still works.
Yeah.
Okay, so going from there, let me just get, before we jump into, because I'm going to talk to you about football in a sec, because we got through a really crazy weekend, and this is still the First and 10 podcast, but of course we dabble it in all. And make sure, guys, if you have not listened to the 94 by 50 podcast featuring myself, please go listen to that. It's a great episode. Great job by Ilyas, of course. Your team right now in the NCAA basketball, which team surprises you the most, and when you think can make a deep run in the championship when it comes to to March Madness? Like, which team right now you think is the most complete, without saying Auburn, most complete team in general? And you can name your top 3 teams that you think will make a run or have the most talent, for those that don't really watch as much.
Honestly, the number one team I'll right away say is Gonzaga.
Okay.
Just because they have the experience, they have the talent. I think their number one problem right now is really 3-point shooting. That's definitely their weakness. But when they don't shy away from the main guy in Drew Timme, they could be unstoppable. Timme is obviously one of the candidates for National Player of the Year, rightfully so. He's been tremendous last year for them in their Final Four run.
Nembhard. Mississauga own.
Nembhard is actually just announced he's on a finalist list for Bob Cousy Award in the top 10 point guards in the country. They're definitely right up there to make a deep run. There's no doubt in my mind that Mark Few once again will make some magic happen come March, because we've seen them do tremendously year in and year out. Regardless of how their season ends, I think they're definitely one of the teams that you can easily consider to be a Final Four team. Another team is Kentucky. I know SEC's as competitive as could probably ever been. You have Auburn, number 1 in the country. Then Kentucky just destroyed the Kansas by 20 over the weekend. That
was nuts. Yes.
With Oscar Tshiebwe, another, candidate for National Player of the Year. Literally averaging nearly 20 and 20. Any given night. He'll give you offensive boards, defensive board, give you the presence on defense. And and their team is pretty complete. If you saw the recent games, Ty Washington is amazing, a freshman who's been tremendous, can score from the perimeter, from the 3, inside, out. Shaden Sharp, who is yet to touch the floor, local Canadian kid who's theoretically number 1 prospect for next year, but possibly will touch the floor, might not touch the floor this year with Kentucky. He is with Kentucky right now, just sitting on a bench and learning from practices and stuff, but he also might be gone next year going to the draft. He's one of the,
number 1 guy. Shaden Sharp is obviously, everyone knows about him down here. He's a problem. He's a problem. Okay. Exactly. So those are your top. So just Kentucky.
Those are the 2.
Right.
Those are the 2. And honestly, it's hard. It's really hard to call it right now, but there are 2 teams in the Big Ten that could make a run, but I don't know. You can never, like the way Illinois played last year, losing to Loyola Chicago in the second round is something that no one, I would say, expected. With Sumu, Coffee, Cockburn, Carbello. There's a
They have a
list of
left,
players you can name.
the lefty,
Frazier.
the lefty. Yeah, he's nasty. He's nasty. He's from
Yeah, Trent
Chicago.
Frazier. He's
Yeah,
amazing. And he's actually finding a great stride right now. The improvement from last year to this year is fantastic.
incredible.
When Carbello was off, not playing, whether it's COVID or an injury, Trent Frazier gave you an easy 20 and you wouldn't even realize he gave you 20.
Of course, of course.
And
Yeah.
and Purdue is the other team, with Zach Edey,
Hmm.
Jaden Ivey, another candidate for National Player of the Year.
Canadian.
And then,
Edey. Canadian.
Oh, Zach Edey, yeah. So
Yeah.
most certainly. And then Travion Williams, a guy who was rather one of the best players on the team last year, still is one of the best players on the team, but shifted from being a starter to coming off the bench because they don't want to play two bigs at the same time. But their defense could be the problem. Mm-hmm. Yesterday when they played Ohio State at Purdue, they gave up 43 points and a half.
Mm-hmm. That's nice.
And leading almost by 15 at one point, mm-hmm. made them come back, and Jaden Ivey had to bail them out with a game winner off the 45 there, mm-hmm. with like 0.6 seconds left for Ohio State, basically not leaving any room or chance to have a shot at winning that game. But I think if I had to really pick those teams, they would be the ones, and Baylor could be a sleeper for going back-to-back as well.
Of course. So, wow, your team mentioned Michigan Wolverines are not mentioned with Caleb Houston and those boys because, of course, they don't have Isaiah Livers. They don't have certain guys, so that makes sense. You're not going to choose them.
They don't have a lot of guys. It's funny because I've seen them make a lot of great plays, and then I've seen them shy away from really works for them. So the chemistry level is still not necessarily there. You see strides from Caleb Houston. The 3-game stretch that he had, he was amazing, averaging like 18 points a game in that 3-game winning streak against Northwestern. And shoot, I'm forgetting.
It's all good. It's all good. 3-game stretch. 3-game stretch.
Indiana. Indiana. They beat Indiana by 18, and Indiana gave work to Purdue at home. Okay. You know what I mean? It's like Purdue barely came out on top, and it's like you see them make great plays, great runs, but then the experience is not there. Like you said, Livers, Smith, Chaundi Brown, and obviously Franz Wagner are not there. And the fact that they had 2 games that were postponed due to COVID, they didn't have full team practicing and kind of going at it. Even some of the losses that they had, they still were not necessarily there just because they didn't have enough time playing with one another, and offense obviously is not working out for them yet.
All right, so I'm going to transition. Not quite there yet, but hey, one day. But Ohio State is always going to hail OH. It's gonna happen soon. Anyways, I'm going to transition now from the basketball side of things to the NFL side of things. So I know you're watching this weekend. Incredible games in our conference championships. Of course, I wanted to talk to you about who your potential Super Bowl winner would actually be. Myself, as a Bengals supporter, even when they weren't good, I always used to get clowned back 10 years, whatever. People would ask me which team I actually really liked. And, of course, it was Carson Palmer, Ocho Cinco, TJ was not back in the day. That's why you played Madden with a lot. And now to see them going to the Super Bowl first time in my lifetime, incredible. But I wanted to get your takes from the games that we had this weekend. Speaking of SEC, you said SEC is obviously very up and down and very competitive in basketball. 2 SEC quarterbacks are in the Super Bowl. Matt Stafford went to Georgia, and of course LSU's Joe Burrow, right, with his boy Jamar Chase. The Bengals go into Arrowhead Stadium and beat the Chiefs 27-24, coming back from pretty much being 18 down. Ridiculous game. I know you watched that from start to finish. Once again, it was a major collapse from Patrick Mahomes from the beginning, from the second half. Seeing that game, and of course seeing the second game, which game was more interesting to you thought?
I mean, both games were pretty good, I would say. It's really hard to argue which was better, but I think the fact that the Rams were down to the Niners. Mm-hmm. Then obviously Cincinnati, the Bengals were obviously down to the Chiefs at halftime, and both teams came out different.
Second half,
really different mentality. It's funny. to see both of these teams, like we talked about them. You said Cincinnati was your dark horse just because, you know, you were a Cincinnati fan. And I was saying the Rams were the favorites, you know, and I was saying like that defense is too much. And they made plays at the end in the second half. They got the sack. They got an interception. And it's funny because that O-line didn't allow one sack all game.
I know.
And
It's
it just happened, right? And it's like, and same thing with the Bengals. They just shut them down.
In the second half.
In the second half. And exactly. The defense came to play. And it's funny because I saw Jamal Adams literally tweet out, defense wins championships. And literally what we saw on display, defense won those games. And I can't wait to see for the Super Bowl. But, you know, I'm going to stick with the Rams. Sorry to the Bengals fans. I don't know. But the Rams are complete. They have both Cooper Kupp and Odell Beckham Jr. had 100-yard games. Cooper Kupp with
2 touchdowns.
2 touchdowns, exactly.
He's disgusting.
Late in the second half, right? They played godlike. You know what I mean? Tyler Higbee gets injured.
Blanton
comes in, X factor right away. The glue guy gets a few first downs for Stafford and the company. And, you know, like I said, that defense made the plays. They were on brink of losing with that almost to be.
It should have been. It should have been. That would have been game.
Exactly. That would have been game. And because LA had no timeouts. They had nowhere to go. With those 2 challenges, I don't know what they were thinking about. Sean McVay was somewhere.
This is by far the best playoffs I've ever seen in the NFL. And NFL playoffs are always great, but this is the best, most competitive. Every single one of the games from this weekend and last weekend were decided by 3 points or less, right? So everything came down. Kickers came right down. You got Money Mac in the Bengals. That's why you draft a kicker out of Florida. Another SEC guy, Florida kicker, drafted in the second round, and he literally has not missed since week 17. So incredible kind of display of football that we see. There's a lot going on. But I'm going to go with the Bengals. I think Joe Burrow, they're a second-half team. They never feel like they're out. No one can really stop Jamar Chase. They contained him last game, but in down and distance, red zone opportunities, he's the guy you're going to. T. Higgins, ACC guy, went to Clemson, played with Trevor Lawrence, won the championships. He's another guy that's just incredible. So I'm going to take the Bengals to kind of go off and ride and sit and actually win a Super Bowl this time. If they lose, it'll be the second time they lost in the Super Bowl in the past 30 years. So they've never had a championship. This has to be the time that they win and kind of go from there. But, okay. Hey, you've been great, man. I have obviously more things I can ask you going forward. But right now, are you like your regiment? Are you just working out every single day? Are you practicing with your team? Is there any basketball teaming going on over there in Dalhousie area, in Halifax? Or what's going on?
Well, you're allowed to have workouts. We're like 10 people max in the gym. That's what we're allowed. We're doing some workouts. You know, I go to a weight room once a day, do my weight work. I do some skill work, shooting work on my own time. But yeah, I still do have a couple of workouts with the guys from the team and the coaching staff. That's what we pretty much do. You know, just waiting for the season to resume. As they announced, we will be playing, I believe, starting mid-February. We'll be allowed to have a full contact practice with the full roster on the floor. So pretty much, you know, waiting for everything to resume like everyone else.
So let me ask. I know you asked me. I asked you on your podcast, but are you still just listening to J. Cole before you go on the floor? Is J. Cole your guy still?
Well, I listen to J. Cole just every day. That's just the matter. But it's really because here's the thing: I could find a track that would be just like, damn,
it's a banger,
It's a high, it's a heat. You know, you hear it's like, and you just listen to it before the game. So it's like, honestly, is whatever jumps.
Whatever jumps, of course,
for that moment.
Hey, I can go on, and of course, ask you more questions as we go through. Oh, one thing I want to ask you before we leave is when you're learning English, were guys talking trash to you in English and you literally didn't know what they were saying, and that's another reason. How did that go? Are you someone that talks trash? Are you talk trash during basketball as well?
Hey, man, I want to say no, but if someone starts, I keep it going.
You keep it going.
So it's like I normally don't. but it's like, if that's if I have to, I do it.
So you're
Like, I
saying you're
just
Patrick
like,
Beverley.
I'm on the low though. Like, I don't really do it, but if you want to, I'll let you have it, type of thing.
So you're not backing down. You're okay. Kobe mentality, mom
It's
mentality.
like, I'm just like, I'll let you hear what I think. You know, like, I'm not gonna walk away. I'm just like, if you're gonna tell me something about me, I'm gonna be like,
You're
why
trash.
are you even talking? True story. One time, like, there was a moment in the game, like my first year, we're playing Mount Allison, and I fell to the ground. There was a broken play, whistle. I think I was called for a foul, questionable call, whatever it was. I don't even remember anymore. A guy from the opposite team literally stepped on my back.
Oh, well,
like,
that's a fight.
I'm like, what am I going to do in a game? I'm not trying to put my team in a bad position, or even myself either.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm like, whatever. Coaches, I mean, the coaches will talk to the refs and whatnot. But the refs, you know, they could be questionable half the time. So, but this dude randomly from the bleachers, like, I don't even know who they are. Like, you know, away game. You know how away fans.
People are going to, they can pick.
Yeah, they'll go talk. So we're lining up for the free throw shots, the next play or something. And this random dude with a busted haircut. Like, when I say busted, like, someone put a ball on his head, shaved around it, took it off, and said, go.
go live. Yeah.
And I was like, I'm lining up. I'm just chilling. And it's like, this guy's like, hey, yo, 12, how's your back? I'm like, who's talking to me? I'm like, I look at the bench. Nobody said nothing on the bench. Then I turn around and I look. I'm like, is that his hair? Is that the hair he got?
Is that what you said?
Like, yeah, no. In my head, I'm like, yo, what is he? I turn back around. I'm like, better than your haircut. And then did not say one word the whole game to me.
Right.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm gonna let it have it. I'm gonna let it happen. But it's like,
hey,
if you want it, I can give it to you. Yeah,
you're not the one.
Like, I can give it to you, but it's like, I don't normally do.
Hey, Ilyas, thank you so much for joining the First and 10 podcast, man. You can find Ilyas at Ilyas_Kurbanov7 on Twitter. Where can they find you on Instagram? Instagram, the same thing?
It's Ilyas Kurb 12. That's my Instagram. And 94x50, man.
94x50
on
podcast.
all platforms: Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and soon to be on Spotify as well.
Absolutely, man. Make sure you listen to 94x50 podcast. Great episodes, great insight there, as usual, man. Really appreciate it, man. Hopefully we can have you on here again in the future. But this is the First and 10 podcast. Keep balling.